This is the part where we banter back and forth.
Is that what's supposed to happen?
I don't
What's
know,
going on, everybody?
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to thispinkcloud.com.
Welcome.
Coming to you live from Frisco Studios, all the way out in Frisco, or Venture X Studios.
Venture X Studios in Frisco.
Out in Frisco, Texas.
Indeed.
On the JPK network.
There you go. There you go.
There we go. Did we get it all in?
No, probably not. No. Yeah, welcome, everybody. Glad to have you all with us.
So, we were, talking just last Friday, right?
Is there anything going on? Yeah, Jim Bob, old Jim Bob.
We had Jim Bob, our lovely mascot of the show, actually on the show.
We used magic to turn him into a small bobblehead. But before he was a real man, and he was on our show last week, and it was good to talk to him. We know Jim Bob from kind of inadvertently through rehab, where Kelly and I met.
Yes.
Some of y'all may know Kelly and I met in rehab 9 months ago.
That is correct. And while we're at it, we might as well just throw it up there. Summer Sky
in Stephenville, Texas.
Which, look, he's on it today.
Our personal favorite rehab.
There you go, of course.
Of the many rehabs
But
out there.
so long story short, we met Jim Bob. Jim Bob was on the show last week.
Yep.
And then, we do this show to help people out. We do this show to help people obtain and maintain sobriety, right?
That's the idea.
Okay. So doing that, Jim Bob reposts the show.
Okay.
And then he actually has one of his friends from Alabama reach out to him and ask for help.
There you go.
So I'm like, hey, it's working.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, that's part of it, right? Like sometimes you don't even, you aren't even in that mindset where I'm thinking about asking for help, and then something like that. I guess he knew Jim Bob before.
It's actually a she.
She knew Jim Bob before, reached out to him, and I hope that comes to fruition in some kind of way.
I'll do my Jim Bob. Well, Kelly,
is that Jim Bob?
I put it. I put her in with a connection who has 18 years of sobriety, and let's see. And it's in her hands and God's hands now.
So you said she was from Alabama?
Yeah.
So there's alcoholics in Alabama too.
Yeah, believe it or not.
Weird.
Believe it or not.
Seems like they're everywhere.
But, I guess we should...
what else is going on?
Well, I don't know. What else is going on in your world besides 250 days, and I'm an RSPS now.
Yeah, that's true. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
To those that didn't see last week,
I am now a recovery
here.
Coach, peer specialist. So now I can coach CG Kid, right?
Now he gets to tell you what to do. I guess that's how Kelly views it.
That's right. Well, I am his sensei in a little way, I guess.
Does he know about this?
He does. He actually referred to me as his sensei.
I do.
That's between you two.
Well, I think I understand
the force
and the fact of how heavy an enormous amount of knowledge can be on one person.
Hey, there's no doubt that overthinking and constant thinking is a burden.
Yes.
Yeah, I know how that feels.
You know the sorrows of mankind.
I do know how that feels.
Exactly. I mean, that's it. That's what the Bible says.
Is it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, so welcome, man.
Yeah,
it's good seeing you guys.
Yeah.
So you've had a busy day today.
Yeah, it's been pretty busy.
Well, I appreciate you coming back on the show. I know, obviously, it's our #1 episode. Imagine that, dude.
Was that season 1, season 2?
I don't know.
Oh, I'd almost wish to reference it for the people at home, but I don't remember which one it was. That's
right.
Okay.
But at that point, you were self-diagnosing yourself with ADHD.
Medically diagnosed, and
medically.
I haven't been it hasn't been declared a misdiagnosis, but I'm starting to suspect that might have been a misdiagnosis.
Okay,
it's a suspicion thing.
So
what brings about the suspicion?
There you
go. I like to just catch you guys up since I last been here.
Okay, please do.
So I was pretty isolated, but I was also having like a lot of realizations about stuff and overthinking, like you said.
Sure.
And when you overthink society and yourself, you can start alienated not just from society, but also who you are. And at some point, I started drinking, and I don't really know. It wasn't like it was such a casual thing. I was just like, whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Out with the girl, I was like, whatever. And then I kept drinking, and then, I decided to quit because I got into a fight with Alexa at like 2 a.m.
You told me about
Yeah, and it was like
yeah.
a vicious fight, and then I was like, it went on for like an hour. It was
Having-
like,
I've got to ask,
having
is
a-
Alexa a person? Or
No,
are we talking
having
about
a
the
fight
machine?
with his artificial intelligence.
I got the impression that's what we were talking about.
some people are fighting with it now because I probably triggered their device to turn on
Right.
by saying that,
There you go.
But
So there
yeah.
were disagreements with the
Yeah,
answers
then I
Alexa was
realized,
giving
like, I kind of laughed, and then I quit drinking for health reasons, and I was like, if I could fight with that, I could fight with anything. And I was having, like, 8 to 12 drinks a day, which is pretty bad, but it doesn't really explain what happened next, because I've quit alcohol many times and never had this experience. So I woke up, it was 2 days after I quit drinking, and I woke up in a complete psychotic episode. Like, I was having hallucinations, I was laughing like the Joker, I was crying the next minute, I was manic episodes, depersonalization, like looking at my hands, feeling disconnected from my body, and then having anxiety attacks, out-of-body experiences where I was becoming the room. I got this buzzing all throughout my spine, and then just like weird, like my body felt like it was going to implode, and I didn't know what was going on. So I called up my mom. I just said, I have to get out of this environment. And then through a lot of events, the way it's been identified to me as a Kundalini awakening is what they would call, which is apparently the path of energy. And I was never taught this in a 12-step program, but there's a path of enlightenment, which is more so faith in life, and the path of energy is trying to understand life. And I was trying to understand life to communicate it to others. And drug abuse can actually trigger a Kundalini awakening, which, so I believe the alcohol abuse triggered
One
this.
thing I did do some research on after we spoke about that. So there is the light Kundalini awakening, and then there is also the dark.
I had the
So
darkest.
you had the dark?
I mean, I've had scary experiences.
Kundalini. I mean, the word's cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to look into this.
Yes, Kundalini, it's a yoga type
Yeah.
as well as just a spirituality, right?
It was the scariest thing that ever happened to me. I mean, I've done salvia. I've been shot at. I've had a lot of things happen, and it was the most terrified I'd ever been in my life.
I love how salvia and being shot at were in the same.
Yeah.
Like those are the two
same.
things.
Yeah, that
Hey,
happens.
I've done salvia. I know what you're talking about. That's some weird stuff sometimes. You definitely all of a sudden you're just boom in a whole nother
Yeah.
dimension or something for about 18 seconds and then you're back. But
Right. But so, okay, back to
So
shot.
so I go with my mom, and I had to use my mindfulness coach, so I needed a guide to get through it, kind of. But I've done a lot of psychedelic drugs in the past, so I kind of knew, okay, this is like a bad trip, and the last thing you want to do is avoid anxiety. I had to speak in like Hong Kong over video call like the next day, and I could have
Right.
canceled that, but I know from bad trips and experiences that if you start changing the way you behave, because the anxiety, even in an awakening experience, they're saying the anxiety is trying to teach you something. Like, I was anxious about checking my bank account because I was like, this isn't the time to do that when I'm already having all this.
Sure.
But then I had to say, no, you're doing it.
Right.
And I had to walk through all those things. And I talked to my mindfulness coach. And what I realized is that I was trying to understand my narrative. And I realized that my narrative was just as senseless as society, as far as understanding my narrative in order to dissect who I am as a human being.
Sure.
In other words, who I am in a spiritual sense is beyond my comprehension, and I've been trying to understand it so much that I drove myself insane.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
And I laughed really hard, and then I let go of so much, and I experienced, I guess, what some would call like a state of enlightenment.
Right.
And what it was not anything I thought it was. I always thought it was like a journey to get from here to there, like consciousness, like you study,
Sure.
especially at the books. It's like you get from step 1 to step 12, or I was just reading books on consciousness, oneness, the subject, object, like all these things, thinking I'm going to go there. But when it actually happened, I realized I just love normalcy. I was so grateful to not be in the Kundalini badness that
Right.
I was like, dude, I love normalcy. And I stopped thinking because I didn't want it to return. And then as far as like alcohol, it's like, it became like, heck no, I'm never drinking again because I don't want that to ever happen again.
While we're bringing up the Kundalini, that sounds like the light portion of the Kundalini awakening symptoms that you went through the dark, and then also because it's an experience of oneness where you feel where your compassion for humanity increases, and then just a spiritual connection with the divine that transcends the ego.
Yeah, it's really, really trippy. And in recovery, I mean, I feel like it's presented that you know, there's a spiritual awakening when you finish the 12 steps. And I'm starting to realize like the actual awakening is a lifelong, it keeps happening.
Sure. Yeah.
So there's awakenings. That was one awakening that was really intense
Sure.
for me, of letting go. It's one I needed the most, I think, of anything.
Well, and I love that because we always point out, hey, there is no magic pill for sobriety, because if there was, you know, we'd all take too many. There's no magic pill. You have to keep up at it, and it's a work in progress. Sobriety and your mental health is a work in progress.
There's all kinds of, you know, cliches or whatever that describe it, you know, in shorter form. But a lot of what I'm hearing is, you know, you were kind of trying to dive so deep into all of the questions that we all ponder, like, why am I here? What, you know, what's the point
questioning why I have questions even.
Yeah.
Like going way too deep with it.
Yeah, well, and that's what happens is you end up going, you know, into almost, you know, nonsensical, non-useful thought. And anyways, you know, to go to the cliche part of it, don't take yourself so seriously kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
like,
just I'm inspired more by dogs every day.
You've said that in the past, and I mean, they just are.
Their presence and their no conception of self. They don't need a conception of self like I do, you know?
Yeah.
So anyways, that goes on, and then I feel way better, but I'm still having symptoms of it to this day. Like
I notice you keep on messing with your spine.
Yeah, I have a buzzing in my spine constantly, and I have this thing where I'll like my leg will like tremble, or like it feels like my bones are shaking, and it'll be in my arms, but it feels good. And then there's I wake up at 4 a.m. no matter what I do. Right. And I have closed eye visuals at night. If I'm about to go to bed, there's this point where I'm not asleep, but I'm already starting to dream. So there's like online, I mean, if someone laid out the 7 symptoms, I was like, dude, I have all of them, and I don't think this is normal. And I was like, this is weird. I don't know if I believe in Kundalini or any of that. I'm just saying that's the thing it aligns with. So then I started realizing different things. Like I started realizing, hey, the prescription I'm taking, my memory sucks. And I started saying maybe it's that. Like, Wellbutrin is causing memory problems. Okay. And I went online and looked up ADHD medication and memory. And apparently if you don't have ADHD, your medication will cause memory problems. Right. I have to backtrack a little bit. Before that even happened, I started looking at my body and realizing things I never saw before. Like my skin was dry. I started realizing I had a decreased libido. Okay. Like my drive was just not really there.
And this is all while taking Wellbutrin. And then how long were you drinking for? Sounds like just like a week or two. Not too long.
Yeah, it's like a week or two. Yeah, but see, this was my whole life. I started realizing, hey, this has been going on since years. Also, I noticed that it's really easy for me to gain weight, really hard for me to lose it. Right. Lymph nodes are somewhat swollen. And it's weird, I was never aware of any of this before, and I started thinking maybe I have a problem. So I went to an endocrinologist. And first they test for testosterone, which I thought was, okay, that's the weight gain. That's the anxiety, depression thing. They came back, said your testosterone is actually abnormally high, but in a healthy range. So then I get a full blood panel going. And after they told me that about testosterone, I started eating really healthy because I was studying the body and I realized, oh my gosh, this thing is complicated. Right. And I was like, I'm going to go on.
Body.
By the way, yeah.
Yeah. So I went on paleo and I said,
the perfect machine.
Yeah. When someone tells you you have that much testosterone, they're in a nice way saying maybe you're just lazy. And I kind of took that, like I needed to actually listen to that voice in my head. I've always listened to the comforting one. Maybe I need to listen to the one that's like, get up.
The voice of reason.
Like maybe this is laziness. So I started
your spiritual mom.
Yeah. So I started working out way harder, and I started eating way healthier. I took my body way more serious. Like it became high intensity workouts. And then I noticed the medication was causing memory loss. Big time. Okay. The more healthy I got, the more I got memory loss. So I looked up ADHD medication and memory loss, and it's a sign you don't have ADHD. Okay. So if somebody was prescribed, let's say, for instance, Wellbutrin, Adderall, and they're getting memory issues, that's a good sign that they have too much dopamine.
Right. So have you stopped taking the medication?
Yeah. So that at that point, I felt like I was uncomfortable stopping it.
And now, did you do it also medically supervised?
No.
Okay.
No.
That's kind of where I was going with that too.
Right.
Which is not the safest idea.
Sure. Right. we always.
I was on the lowest
medical supervision is important, kids.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're young, you're in good shape. I think I just heard you say you were on the lowest adult.
Yeah,
dosage.
the lowest adult dosage, and I looked up the taper protocol, and I would be at the one before cutting it off.
Okay.
So I was like, I can get back on if I haven't even brought it up to my doctor. I hope you know.
Well,
by the way,
at least there's some, I
haven't seen 'em.
responsibility and some thought that went into it. So that's good. How long have you been off the medication now?
Oh gosh, it's been about maybe, I don't know, I think like 10 days, something
Okay.
like that, 12 days.
how long were you on the medication?
About 6 months.
Okay.
And so I get off of it. I felt like I started getting this thing where I was like, I need to face things that are uncomfortable. When I saw the laziness thing, ironically, I was on YouTube, I was on the homepage, and I saw a guy named David Goggins, and the YouTube thumbnail just caught my attention. And he's a former Navy SEAL, and he has this
Right.
way of talking about a recovery that I didn't know existed, that it was a different way of looking at recovery, where it was about doing the things you don't want to do. It seems really obvious. But I realized that I always try to stay in a comfort zone, and I'm not willing to really push, as far as getting up at 5 a.m. and going running, like that
Sure.
kind of pushing, and
Right.
build up to that and make it like a lifestyle where this is your new normal. And he, of course, he even says he don't want to do it, but then you start getting victories. You
Right.
start releasing like something.
I think build up to that is a good, a good place to kind of focus on it. A lot of times you want to tackle it all in once as an addict or an alcoholic.
Yeah.
That's kind of the mentality. It's like, I want that. I'm gonna do this and this. I'm
Then
gonna
you collapse.
But it makes it unattainable.
Sure.
Build up to that kind of thing. Also, just want to jump in real quick because we were kind of starting to touch on it, but ceasing medications like that, and it sounds like you're past the point where there would be any sort of withdrawal period. So I think you're probably okay. Just something to point out: different medications react to different people in different ways. Especially, the amounts are important. How long you've been on it's important. What kind of medications, like SSRIs and things like that, can be really tricky to stop without
And
medical
just as a
supervision.
disclaimer, this is not he is not a real professor.
Yeah, but that's kind of what I'm getting at is just, hey, bring it up with your doc first is always the smartest thing, because you never know what kind of reaction you're going to have. There's suicidal thoughts can creep in. All kinds of weird things can creep in when you see medications that affect brain
and just
chemistry
feeling
like that.
different and feeling, how you were describing, basically.
So just want to throw that out there for the audience. But yeah, okay, so cool. So David Goggins, and then kind of go.
Yeah, so I was already in this mindset of doing what I'm uncomfortable with. So when I quit the medication, which again, hell no, I don't advise to do.
Right.
I had a slight withdrawal, but I saw it as, hey, this makes it more uncomfortable to go running. So just quitting the medication didn't make me shut down. It actually made me, in a way, push harder, because I was like, if I do this while I'm uncomfortable, then when I become comfortable, this will be like nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
And the withdrawal wasn't bad at all. I actually started feeling better almost rapidly as far as memory, working memory, and focus. I
Okay.
went the opposite way of what I thought it would go.
Well,
Just
Wellbuten's
mood.
one of the easier ones too, so that's good, and especially on that low, that's good. I think that helped too. So the last 10 days you've just been kind of pushing yourself physically.
Oh no,
like
this
that,
is
or?
what's crazy. So then the endocrinologist comes back with the full panel. On it was like it was not long after I quit Wellbutrin. It was like a couple days. This was on March, I want to say around March 13th.
Okay.
So they say that you're abnormally high in cortisol, really bad,
Okay.
and you're low in you're deficient in vitamin D,
Okay.
and you have slight hyperthyroidism. Now all this is solvable with over-the-counter medication. Now I
Right.
went on a site called 23andMe, and they told me I had a genetic variation called MTHFR.
Okay.
So I'll kind of explain like.
Oh, wait, break that down for us.
I'll
What does
start
that
with
stand for?
MTHFR because this
Yeah.
one was really intense for me. MTHFR, 40% of people have this genetic
Okay.
variation. So if
and
you're
what
in
does
a-
the acronym stand for, though?
Oh gosh, if I could only.
Okay. I'll let it.
Yeah.
When you're getting into genetics and stuff like that, who knows?
Okay.
Yeah.
It's pretty long, yeah. But what it does when
Could
you're
just be whoever discovered it, really.
yeah.
It's their name.
Yeah.
Well, when you have that genetic variation, what happens is your body doesn't convert folic acid to vitamin B9, and in that conversion process, put B9 where it needs to go. So these people, what it causes ultimately, one of the big things is a decrease in serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine. And I have this genetic variant. So I have this MTHFR, and the solution is avoid folic acid, which everybody always told me to take or eat.
Sure.
And take something called methylfolate with a complex or B vitamins. So I took it, and I literally, I was like everything else, self-medicating 100%. It was like how people describe Prozac, but it didn't feel like a chemical at all.
Right.
It just felt like this
natural.
is like returning to my childhood. This is like
Right.
who I was always. It's just this calm, like, just ability to, and the grass got a little greener. Everything got brighter. I got more motivation, and my focus just went up. It was everything I wish that ADHD medication did.
Right.
And then with cortisol, I started reducing my stress with fish oil, ashwagandha, yoga, acupressure. I went all in on it. And then I felt even better. And then with vitamin D, bringing that in, I felt even better.
Right.
And then I got to a point where I was like, oh my gosh, this is like being born at 31.
Right.
And then I started thinking back. I was like, I've been to rehab several times. I've been to, psychiatric doctors, and I've never once gotten blood work in my life.
Right.
And it's never even been offered or suggested or pushed. And then I started thinking, like, this is crazy to me that we have like that's not a first step, because the thing with mental health is when you're coming at it with therapy and you're coming at it with antidepressants, these things are processes. They take a long time. Antidepressants, trial and error. Therapy can take years. With the body, when you see that, hey, they're deficient in testosterone or thyroid problem or deficient in iron or vitamins, those things can be solved rapidly, and those lifestyle changes will make a huge difference within days. And then also it's measurable. We know, like with ADHD, you can't measure
So
dopamine.
when you went to rehab before, they never tested your blood? You
No, never
had
even
blood work?
offered it.
Oh, really? Wow.
And then I started talking to people at meetings, and I started talking to family members. Like one parent of someone addicted, their kid went to treatment 10 times, and she told me no, they've never done blood work. And a lot of people in the meetings never gotten blood work at a rehab.
Wow.
And then I started telling people about my experience with methylfolate. And some people, I said, like, the worst thing that can happen is it doesn't work, from my understanding. You take it, and you might get a little edgy because you have too much methylfolate, but it's not like something that's going to really harm you. But a lot of these people struggling with addiction and recovery took it, and they were saying, wow, like they had depression issues, they had anxiety. A lot of that went away.
Right.
So then it's like the ABC News hits me up and talks about a story on nitrous oxide.
Sure.
And I'm like going crazy with the cortisol treatment. I'm like, this is it. I found recovery. And they're like, why? The question for the topic of the story was, why do people abuse nitrous oxide?
Sure.
Fun.
Right.
So a little time goes by, and like last night, it was put in me to go on Google and look up, how does nitrous oxide get you high?
Sure.
And there's one thing I knew: the primary mechanism of action, NMDA antagonism, which is the same as DXM, PCP, and ketamine.
Right.
But nitrous has a very relaxing component that the others don't necessarily have.
Right.
Ketamine's like a pure dissociative. DXM has kind of like a SSRI antidepressant feel.
Yeah.
PCP has like a stimulant amphetamine feel. So I was like, what is that? How does this actually work? And the way that nitrous gives that relaxing feeling, at least a big contributor to it, is triggering the anti-stress hormonal response, lowering cortisol. And the only other substance that would do that is opiates. And both these things are on the rise. And so then I was like, that's interesting. But you have to think heart disease is on the rise, obesity.
Sure.
Just drug abuse in general, suicide, depression, anxiety, ADHD is even on the rise. So then I started thinking, like, this is just me playing with ideas. I don't really know much of anything, to be honest. But I was like, maybe what I'm dealing with cortisol isn't just me. Maybe the whole quarantine and us not being able to really practice good stress.
Right.
Like, get out and grocery shop and go to the gym.
Sure.
So we're limited in that way. Then we're fed a lot of distress. In a way, we almost like, it's just like a perfect storm to create an influx of a lot of cortisol.
Yeah.
Because there's things we can't fix that we're looking at.
Right.
And then things we can
Well,
fix.
I think it's just gonna, the whole pandemic is going to affect everybody across the board.
Sure.
Alcohol definitely included in that discussion.
We're creatures that want to be a part of a community. We're built that way. We want to interact with each other. I think that's primarily what we're here to do, connect with each other in whatever kind of way we can. And when that's taken away, but through quarantine and things like that, there's going to be all sorts of effects. And then there's all going to be, on the flip side, sorts of coping mechanisms that people will use to deal with those effects. Drugs is a go-to for a lot of people. Drugs and alcohol. I mean, it's a tried and true method to change the way that you feel, generally for the better, very quickly.
Right.
So, yeah.
While we're talking about that, we can go ahead and talk about my drug use.
Oh, all right. Let's do
Real
it,
quick.
Kelly.
No. I want to put in my 2 cents for nitrous oxide.
Okay.
As a DJ, a successful DJ.
I don't doubt you saw a little bit of that.
In the rave scene, we saw, there was canisters of nitrous oxide.
Yeah.
And nitrous oxide with somebody with balloons. And the first time I see that, I go, wow, this is fun. This party has balloons.
Yeah, like the punching bag balloons. I remember they
and
used to do
I'm
it,
just like sitting there going, okay. It's not those kind of balloons, Kelly. It's not like, I'm like, oh, why are they sucking in helium? It's just going to make their voice high.
Nice.
I mean, that's just my naivety.
Might lower your voice. This one's going to lower your voice.
Yeah, exactly. So, there's been songs that have been made about it. My buddy Green Velvet made a song called Flash, which is all about the balloon in the corner and people doing nitrous oxide.
I remember when I was, I don't know, probably 17, 18. For a little while, I got into the rave scene. This is late 90s. And yeah, they would. It was so like clandestine back then. There were the flyers, and you called the number, and that would give you directions.
The map
to the
point, dude.
Field in the middle of
map point.
nowhere where
Yeah.
DJs like you were
Exactly.
playing. And I remember seeing the big like dental office canisters. I don't know how
they
got
weren't
a hold
kidding
of them,
around,
but
but it was like the full on
filling balloons,
big
selling them.
daddies. Yeah,
Yeah, that was one place you'd see it, and then we used to. It was a problem actually for a while. We would restaurant supply stores back then. So you could go to restaurant supply stores and buy. I think you have to get them on the internet now. I don't think you can go to stores now, but I have no idea. Really.
I have heard you can get them on the internet.
Yeah, restaurant
Yes, we have
supply
heard
stores. You get the little canisters. The little like nitrous oxide canisters. You get the whipped cream maker, and we would load that thing up. And I mean, we would drive around doing whippets,
Right, yeah.
like testing our invincibility.
And I also want to point that out. I want to point that out
really.
that nitrous oxide and whippets are the same.
Yeah.
So
we call them
that being
whippets.
said, but then it's all inhalants, right?
Yeah.
So that being said, there are Rush is what they used to call it, and other things that aren't nitrous oxide. But a lot of people just go, oh, it's all inhalants, and it's not all the same.
Well, I know.
I made a point of that.
Yeah,
Duster and
Duster's a big
whippets
one
are
now.
different things.
Right, yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, Duster's a big one now. I personally have never done Duster. It's one of the few drugs out there in the world I haven't done, I guess. But remember when we were in Summer Sky together, they were always talking about Duster or whatever. I'm sure you
Super
probably
dangerous.
Yeah, it's a freaking keyboard cleaner. I mean,
Russian roulette. What did you guys get out of nitrous?
so I mean,
as far as like, what do you feel like it did for you that kept you coming back to it?
I mean, at that point in my life, I was just a completely out of control. I don't know, pleasure seeker. Whatever I could do that made me feel good, I was going to do.
Right.
Was 17, 18, 19 when I was into nitrous. So just completely wheels off. And that's probably part of the appeal of it, was that it was, other drugs I had been doing to that point certainly got me high, but nitrous gets you for a short period of time, granted, not as long as other drugs.
right.
But just gets you so ridiculously high. I mean,
Sure.
this close to losing consciousness,
Right,
But
yeah.
but not. And I mean, I'm telling you, we were like testing the limits of our invincibility almost. I mean, we would drive around at high speeds doing nitrous while behind the wheel. To anyone who's ever done nitrous, it's a terrible idea. And you've got a better you've got a better chance driving blackout drunk. You
Right.
really, really do.
Yeah, nitrous especially because your brain disconnects from the body.
You completely lose vision. You go tunnel vision. I mean, it was a bad deal. So I think that was part of the appeal, man, was like testing my invincibility. Also, it was just cheap and easy to get and goofy. And I don't know, but we would spend nights just loading up a whipped cream canister, sucking on that thing, you know, turning our lips blue, freezing our vocal cords, just, you know, going until
good clean fun.
Yeah, going until our head wanted to explode.
Sure.
Kill as many brain cells as possible in one night. I mean, just nonsense.
Right,
But
yeah.
I don't know that it filled any sort of like emotional thing, but certainly at that time I think was I was so wheels off that the chasing some sort of like am I invincible? Can I possibly even like get caught, get hurt, that kind of thing? Yeah. I think that's kind of where I was during that time frame.
And then, well, let's go ahead, since we've all, shared our experience.
Yeah.
What was your experience?
Yeah, sort of what
just
drew you in, I guess. Or what'd you
Mainly
get out of it?
potentiation of psychedelic drugs. Like,
Right.
I was curious
Yeah.
about what you think about that, because the plur scene, you know about plur.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I was actually talking to them about it.
Peace, love, unity, and respect.
Don't you feel like
I know that acronym.
the rave culture and the people that use that, like raves and stuff, are a little different than, say, like the narcotics as far as heroin and meth users? And what do you think? Because I was telling them, I feel like on the surface it's like that, but then there's this underbelly, and it's not everybody. It's like a trap some fall into.
Yeah.
Right.
Where they're predisposed to addiction, and then it becomes like this kind of gnarly underbelly where it's really about the ecstasy and the nitrous and the girls, and they'll do anything. They'll cut you out of the way to get what they want.
Sure.
It's not plur anymore, you know?
Right.
No, I would
Yeah.
totally agree with
Is
that.
that-
I think
yeah, I
for
was
the
curious.
most,
Unless one of those letters stood for, just out of body experience.
yeah, for the most part, I think like rave culture and that thing is built around that idea.
Yeah,
you know?
sure.
Or like you were talking about psychedelic potentiation. I think that was a big thing with nitrous, especially at raves. It's like take a bunch of acid and then also do this or whatever, right? But yeah, the nasty underbelly, like you're talking about, like 80% of the folks are in it for, I don't know, I guess the right reasons is whatever that.
Whatever
that means.
What are the right reasons, Nolan?
But yeah, well, like you're saying, peace, love, unity, all that. But just to have fun, to have a good experience, to maybe connect with other people in a way you're not able to normally.
Sure.
To connect with the music in a way you're not able to normally.
Right.
That's the idea. But like you said, some people are predisposed to addiction, so it ends up going in this weird, nasty way.
And I feel like what causes that is the brain, and the way the brain works, and also the way the body works. And the body I neglected. I just never felt like it was really critical, because it was never really presented that way. It was always the brain.
Sure.
But the body, apparently vitamin D deficiency and excess cortisol causes drug abuse.
maybe.
That vitamin,
the
I don't know, the vitamin D thing, I've heard that,
Yeah.
and I'm always low in vitamin D.
Yeah.
I'm calling bullshit on that.
Yeah, you never look. The riddle still for a reason.
Yeah.
I think as we continue to learn, especially about genetics,
Yeah.
there's probably
I
a lot.
think there's a lot of validity to what he said as far as blood testing, and that should happen. I think the reason why I was blood tested is because I was diabetic, obviously. But I think they should probably blood test across the board.
Yeah,
well, they do that at Summer
know.
Sky. They do that at Summer
Did
Sky.
they do that with you as well? or-
As an IV user, they were
Yes.
not able to get blood from me at that time. I had
you had no veins.
no usable veins.
Right.
I might have a few now, where
Right.
it would still probably be a chore for
Sure.
someone to do. But I know most of the patients there got blood
That's
tested.
good treatment. But
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like, I swear it's not like.
It is not the norm.
There's
Absolutely
no
not.
policy that says they have to do that. They have to
Right.
drug test.
I think it should be a part of the policy.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's
Here,
the
here.
question for people. Like, and I think that if you're paying $30,000 to go to treatment, they can do a full blood panel. I mean, to
Right.
make sure they touch that base before giving you an antidepressant.
Sure.
Just to make sure, hey, if you have a deficiency, let's treat that first and then look at the brain. Like, I think it should be ground up. Like, the brain is the last thing you really want to touch. But if you have to touch it, you have to touch it.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? But the body's so quick to fix.
Well,
it.
and
certainly the thing we know the least about.
everybody's completely different too in that aspect, and you can't just go, oh, okay, well,
Exactly.
he's an alcoholic, so chances are he's depressed. Let's just go ahead and just
Yeah.
feed him some of these, and maybe.
Well,
he'll
it's
be
certainly
okay.
the thing we know the least about, the brain.
Sure.
you know, so that makes a lot of sense. You touch it last, you know, it's where our least amount of knowledge is. But I mean, probably why it's not blood tested is probably because it's not covered by insurance when treating addiction. You know,
I don't
so
know. I think they could mark it up.
I wish they just had it.
they could work with them on
But
it.
see, the thing is, I was never even recommended to me, and I think you'll find that a lot with people in recovery. That, you know, Summer Sky sounds like a good. I'm sure there's good places. There's exceptions to this rule, and there's just like there's good doctors. But when you ask a group of them, I'm pretty sure if you were to poll something like that, a big majority would say it was never even recommended.
Oh no, it's the first time I'd ever even. I've been to multiple treatment centers over the course of my addiction. That is the first time I've ever even seen it at a rehab.
So I'm 31 and I've been self-medicating this deficiency in my body. I know that because when I remember I was telling you, I'm just convinced I was self-medicating ADHD. Well, I'm going deeper. What was causing the ADHD?
Right.
And these deficiencies in excess will cause symptoms. Now, in a symptomatic diagnosis without blood work, they're going to say it's ADHD. They're going to say it's depression, anxiety. But when you go into the blood work, you would say, oh, well, this is what's causing all of those things.
Sure.
And then I know that because when I'm healing the body, and it's just like a totally different experience. Like you said, everybody's different because I researched it a bit. And if you have too low a cortisol, you want to do weightlifting and running. If you're too high, you want to do yoga and walking.
It makes me want to go get my blood work done again.
Well, yeah, I just think it's some that because
It's probably about time.
Yeah,
too.
sure.
You had it. I remember looking at the paperwork that you had.
Right, I was like,
checking it out.
Hey, look, dude, all my levels are like normal, man. I don't have to take insulin. Yeah, exciting times.
Well, 2020 kind of showed. I mean, if you survive 2020, there's a chance your hormones might be a little messed up. Because like endocrinology, like our behavior affects our hormone concentration. So our behavior changed so dramatically, so fast, and then we're hit with all the stress that the world's about to end. And it's really interesting to look at because I think we've always thought the way to deal with stress is to remove it completely. Because that's why I was actually talking to somebody from their crew earlier, and we were talking about camera work, and she was saying you have to make a bunch of mistakes, which I totally agreed with. That's how you learn something, making a bunch of mistakes. And in a way, with like things like Google, we've cut that out where you search for something and it's fed to you. It used to be you had to know somebody or you had to make mistakes, but then you go further and you realize everything's convenient, like going to the movie theater, gone.
Oh, yeah.
And now it's just all on Netflix, and you don't even have to look for it. It's recommended to you.
Right.
And then, you need food, Uber Eats,
It's kind of funny you say that because, like, I was just going to say that that it's basically like recovery. You know, it's like recovery is a series of making mistakes. You know, and that's. I mean, I was like, oh, is he going there with that? But that's what I thought. That's what popped into my little brain.
Life, you know, when we were earlier, another one of the cliches I was thinking of is this whole, you know, it's a marathon and not a sprint. The idea being spiritual awakening spiritually, learning about, you know, some of the answers to those questions.
Well, knowledge about your blood work.
Those things can change over time. They can develop over time, and they should. I don't personally think that it's about, you know, all of a sudden I learn some truth and that is my truth no matter what for X amount of time.
Right. Yeah.
That truth can change and should change if I'm growing and continuing to seek God and seek answers in some kind of way. So, but you know, all of that stuff, I've just, the one thing I know about recovery for sure is it works a heck of a lot better when the other people are involved.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. You're talking about a community aspect,
And a lot of what you were just talking about, you know, isolates a person, right?
Right, yeah.
And, I mean, it's. I wonder how many folks are out there just, you know, going through their whole day with almost no human interaction whatsoever.
I guarantee you this. I guarantee
no, you don't have to.
But I guarantee you this guy can relate because you do self-isolate a lot, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you would consider yourself.
You can get in a trap of thinking a video call is the same as going to see somebody. But the thing with they call it, I think it's eustress, and then there's distress. Eustress is good, but it actually needs a physical component to be released. You have to physically do something to release it. So it's not the same. Right. It's not the same. There's not that sense because when you're driving somewhere, your car could break down. So what are you doing? You're actually facing a risk, and then you come out ahead. It's stressful to drive. Right. That's why we're avoiding it.
By the way, dude, good job on driving yourself here.
Yeah, like I was driving here, and I was like, I have a PTSD driving anxiety.
Yeah, sure.
And
well, no. I was like, because I thought he was going to be with the film crew today. By the way, we're being filmed.
It's so funny. It's so funny you mentioned that. so I don't know why this just came to mind, but it happened to me. So right before I went into Summer Sky, right before I got sober, things were not going well, obviously, right? They rarely are before someone decides to sober up. But I'm not generally a suicidal person, but I had become suicidal in this weird, very specific way. Had a life insurance policy and was trying to find out a way for my family to cash in on that, and me to check out, right?
Right.
And the best way I had come up with was all of a sudden this idea came to mind. I should drive off one of those overpasses, right? One of the big overpasses. Once that idea got in my brain, I would have full-on panic attacks on these overpasses. And even now, 9 months sober, I still operate on those overpasses the same way I was that month before I got sober, trying not to kill myself. What will happen is I get on there and I have to focus on the road, because if out of the periphery I see how high up I am, immediately some voice is like, drive off, come on, just do it, just do it, just do it, just do it, just do it. It's this weird battle I fight on overpasses. Wondering when that's going to go away.
It sounds like you could use some therapy, my friend.
Maybe, yeah. Well, talking about it right here and talking about it is probably good.
Hey, thank you for sharing.
Oh, yeah.
It's I relate. I mean, in a way I relate.
Yeah.
But I think it's so important that I used to, like, old Philip would have probably stopped driving. I mean, got an Uber, even though it's not safer. I just wouldn't have to deal with the stress of doing it.
Oh, yeah.
You see how, like, technology has made that easy for me?
Oh, yeah.
And that's the issue, I feel like, is that when COVID hit and quarantine happened, we were kind of pushed to move to a sedentary digital lifestyle. And I think some people, because the thing is, people are stressed out. They're stressed out because they thought the world was in the end. There's racial issues. There's division. There's
it's not like we were killing it. We weren't killing it before COVID hit.
Yeah, this was already happening.
Before that.
This was already happening. I think the way that, and then they're working jobs and they can barely pay their bills. They don't like working the job. So that's not an example of, I mean, it's work, but it's work that you hate doing. And when I got home, so I'll just share from my experience. It's like all I wanted to do was escape that, and there's so many options to do that.
Right
now. It's ridiculous.
Oh,
like,
instant
gratification is just bleeding, and even the promotions I get. Every promotion I get is about how to do something faster, easier, smarter, better.
Right.
But so you save all this time, and that could be a really good thing. These things can be tools that can be to our benefit. But with that extra time, what am I doing?
Right. Yeah.
Am I doing yoga? Am I going running? No.
Yeah.
I have all this extra time. I'm not playing guitar now.
I'm doing this.
Yeah. You see what I'm trying to say? And it seems like, and then so this is where it gets kind of more creepy, where I looked up COVID-19 and cortisol. And so they actually researched this very early on. Why is that? Because SARS was known to astronomically reduce cortisol, like way too much. What they found with COVID-19 is it jacks it up like crazy. So you have 1 to 200 nanograms per milliliter normally, and I'm not a scientist. This is just basically what I read.
Rough figures. Right.
Yeah.
What you've read.
So when you have COVID-19, it can shoot up to 3,200. So to give you a reference point, major surgery on average will shoot you up to 1,000. This is what I was reading. So it's over 3 times more than major surgery. Now the thing is, when your cortisol goes that high, to bring it back down, you actually have to do some work to bring it down. It's not one of those things where you can go about this consistent sedentary lifestyle. So what I'm saying is, on top of all that went into this quarantine, if somebody like me got COVID, I mean, even the fact that you have something that you can die from, that's going to jack your levels up.
Sure.
And then I recover. Well, a lot of people have long-lasting effects after COVID-19. And I think not always, but I think in some cases, it could have to do with we're not really taught how to manage stress. And it's not something that really enters our minds too much.
Sure.
Like how important that is.
Yeah, that's a super great point, that we're not taught how to manage stress. I mean, I don't recall.
I blame it on whoever didn't teach me that. I blame my alcoholism on that.
But I didn't even think about it until I was 31 and I'd already been to treatment so many times. Like, I never thought about it.
So what's crazy though, like, so from what we talk about, like our perspective, what's crazy is so why is it that X percentage of people, when we basically have talked about why you would seek an escape, right? Why you would seek stress relief in alcohol and drugs, Nitrous specifically, we talked about a little bit, whatever it is. So that's why you might seek it. But so why is it that this percentage of people, whatever number that is, fall into addiction with it? Like, do you think it's genetic? Do you think it's brain? Do you think
I could think it could be a combo platter.
We still don't know. We've been looking at it for years.
Sure.
No one knows.
My best guess, because everything that I've been learning, and I don't know anything. That's why I started off saying I don't know anything.
Right.
Because I always am proven wrong. I mean, last time, what was it, like a month or something ago? I was
Right.
convinced I had ADHD.
Sure.
Now I'm questioning that.
Right.
So I don't even want to say I don't have ADHD. That's why I say I'm questioning it. Because
Right.
who knows? I could come back next.
You're ADHD.
I'm trying to stick with it.
ADHD neutral.
Look, I'm pretty simple now, but like
Right.
I'm understanding simplicity is not knowledge. You know,
Sure.
because then you're jumping back and forth. I don't care to really know much.
Sure.
But what I have been discovering is addiction comes down to self-medicating, and it's a societal problem.
Right.
It's not like drug addiction and fast food and sex addiction. They're all kind of the same thing, and it all comes down to self-medicating. Now, a lot of times this is a dopamine deficiency or monoamine, like serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine. But what makes it easier to solve and more simple, but also more complicated, is that the body can cause those issues. Does that make sense?
So here's my thing. So I buy that as an entry into addiction, right? I buy that a self-medication is perhaps maybe why you try it in the first place, but certainly why it does more for you than maybe
That's what I
normal
mean,
person. Yeah. Like, you know, that's the best explanation I can come up with is normal drinker, you know, a couple of drinks at dinner or whatever, and they're good. And you're like, 2 or 3, what's the big, you know,
Yeah.
why not more? They're like,
Sure.
well, I'm feeling like I'm losing control a little bit. I get 3 drinks in me, I'm starting to get control. You know what I mean? I'm feeling like I'm getting control finally. And that, I think that self-medicating, I think that's the key there, right? That's why it makes me feel that way and not that person perhaps. But why then is the off switch so hard to find? Why can't I stop? Like, that's the part of addiction that's so baffling.
Sure.
Like,
Well, if there was a controllable off switch, there would be no addiction.
There would be no, well, it's,
You
and
know?
that's the crazy part. It's like, I'm not a fool. I know what it's doing to my life. I know it's hurting me, people
Sure.
around me. I don't want to do that, yet still can't turn it off, right?
Right.
It's just so weird. It's so baffling. And I think that's why, you know, so much help is needed. For me, I'll speak for me personally. Like, the only way I've ever been able to stop is with a ton of help from other people and from a power that is not definable and explainable by me, to reaching out to God within myself, within the world, you know, however you want to define it is up to you. But like, that kind of thing has just been so key for me, because I can't figure out how to do it just with my own brain. Like, I don't know how to do it. I tried. I went in circles for too many years, wasting time.
You know what's it's interesting. I never would share this unless I didn't give a crap what people thought about me.
Okay.
So it's like with substances, what's really interesting for me is that you're talking about power of choice.
Right.
Like, where you lose your power of choice, where you can't quit even if you want to. And that's a lot of people don't understand about addiction. Like, in a certain 12-step program, they talk about the hard drinker. I don't speak for that program. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
And they say that's the person that can, you know, once they get a DUI or DWI or maybe 2, they can stop. And then the alcoholic is somebody that can't never stop.
Right.
So I always thought that I was an addict to all substances I put in my body. But I realized at some point the only thing that truly removes power of choice, and you know how somebody will say, I'm an alcoholic, I'm a meth addict, I'm this. So they're identifying
Sure,
with
they're-
that drug, I lose power
With
of
their
choice.
DOC, but then they got the other
The
ones.
other
Yeah.
ones, they might not continue to use them, but they didn't
Sure.
really have that experience of not being able to stop.
Yeah,
The only
right.
one I could not stop was marijuana. That's it. And now you go into, this is where a lot of people, this is why I don't care what people think, because a lot of people come back and they're like, I don't get weed withdrawal. I don't get addicted to weed. But you have to understand,
It's not about that.
I get horrible withdrawals. I lose power of choice. How do I stop smoking weed? I don't even know. It just happens,
Yeah,
and I
right.
wait for it to stop. Now, the thing with marijuana is endocannabinoid, and I don't know too much about it, but endocrine and endocannabinoid sound alike. So I'm not saying, and my endocrine system was always jacked up since I was little. I have adrenal hyperactivity and deficient vitamin D and a slight hyperthyroidism. And weed affects TSH levels in the thyroid, I believe. So it makes sense that when we have 50 different hormones and all these vitamins going on in our unique brain chemistry, that yeah, it's just weed to a lot of people. I consider my reaction to it allergic.
Yeah.
Right.
But for me, I lose choice. Now with alcohol and other things, it's not a justification to use it. But when things get bad enough, like I'm yelling at my Alexa device, or meth,
Right.
you know, it gets bad enough to where I'm tearing up my body.
Sure.
You know, I'm able to say, and that's the thing on my channel, I feel like very few people really catch on to is the drugs I speak on, I've done.
Mm-hmm.
I share the experience, but ultimately I quit because the drug wasn't worth it for some reason.
Right.
And it's like cocaine. Okay, my nose got blew up and it was expensive.
Right.
And the come downs were horrible.
Right. Well, and
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Everyone
I
has a
agree.
reason.
I agree.
But
Alcohol-
marijuana, I don't even know how I stop it.
Alcohol
Right.
and opiates for me. Those are the two where
Well,
I
and then-
know I lost power of choice.
and there's
the rest
also-
of them,
but
I
there's
still felt
also-
like there was at least a little control there somewhere along the
There's
way.
also a
Those two
different,
for me.
everybody also, and I want to point this out, everybody has a different definition of sobriety. You know, there's straight edge, you know, sobriety, but then there's people that I know that are in the program, you know, that smoke weed still.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, that's more power to them.
Yeah,
Like, it's
I mean-
not. It works for them. I wouldn't judge them for it at all.
Sure.
I'm not judging them.
Oh, yeah, we're not
I don't know
here
that
to
it counts
judge
as
at all.
sobriety. I mean, sobriety is just a word that has a definition in the
right.
dictionary. But it could be recovery, certainly.
Sure.
Look, yeah, sobriety, like the act of being sober. Now, the issue with sobriety is not what the act is, it's that people identify with the act. It's like when somebody says, I practice veganism versus I am a vegan, or I am a Christian, I am a this. What you're doing is this is like a tribal mentality of everybody has a label. You're a drug addict, you're sober, you're this, you're that. And it's a tribal mentality of we're each in our own tribe and we use labels to decide. Because we've moved into a nation. We're supposed to be coming together. But these labels actually divide us into tribes. And sobriety, I found, for me, went that way, where it was a way of being different. And if something threatened my sobriety, so in other words, if people accuse me of relapsing when I hadn't, because they look at me with hyperactivity and they're like, let me look at his eyes, let me look at his pores, let me look at
Right.
everything.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
if you looked at anybody that way, you would think
Sure.
they're...
You find something, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
it's like, and then I would get so threatened because why? Because I identified with sobriety. So when they took that away, when they threatened that, then they're going to threaten who I am. And I had to
Right.
learn to step out and say, I am. I don't even know. I wouldn't even say like in a human being, I'm the being. I'm
Right.
something deeper than even being human. I don't know what I am. It's a mystery. And sobriety is a part of myself. And I separate the self from the spirit. Does that make sense at all? So like the AA thing, it's like the conception of self. I feel like it's overlooked. The conception of higher power, it's really talked about.
Right.
But what is the self?
So we got a couple minutes left.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
no,
I get really
man.
passionate.
That's what's
you know,
fun.
I kind of
Yeah.
get fired up.
I think all three of us are. That's what makes
I
us
love it.
fun.
I love it. I'm like, oh yeah. By the way, we have this thing called time.
Yeah, time.
It's just a concept.
Construct of man.
Right. Exactly. But just real quick, shout out to our sponsor, Summer Sky. Love them. Love
Yep.
those guys. If you're on this thing called YouTube, which you might have heard of this guy before.
Sure.
Please, go to our channel, thispinkcloud.com. I have the URL routed there, and just hit subscribe.
Please.
If you like what we're doing, if you like what we're throwing down, we're here to help people.
Yeah.
And that's really the main crux of the show.
Yeah.
Hey.
I love you guys.
Yeah.
Our whole goal is to just talk about recovery, maybe remove some of the fear, some of the stigma.
And to give people a little bit of insight from our own personal
Yeah.
experience and stuff that I wasn't aware of when we were using or when I was using.
a little bit of hope, something,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, for
I mean,
sure.
it can be weird and scary. So
I have a
doesn't have to be.
I have a feeling there is going to be a part 3 with Philip.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I get passionate. I get fired up.
It's always
No,
it's
no,
always
I
fun
love
to
it.
sit down
Yeah.
and go. No, but it's super interesting to me too. I can't wait to see what's revealed over time. Like I was talking about with genetics, I think there's going to be a lot there. I mean, there just has to be. That's going to uncover some of these ideas as to why some people gravitate to marijuana versus opiates, alcohol. Like there's answers in there somewhere.
Sure.
Maybe we figure them out one day, hopefully sooner rather than later. Some of the stuff is deadly.
I think we should do like a little therapy session.
Some
with
of the
just,
stuff
like,
is deadly.
Film a therapy session.
Yeah,
with you,
I'm over here
all
talking
of
to,
us.
I mean,
Like,
I'm still thinking of like, when I was driving, doing those whippets, I mean, that
Yeah.
was madness.
Yeah,
that was
that's
madness.
insane, dude.
We
I mean-
popped curbs. I mean, we,
I've done crazy stuff. too.
yeah, I mean, that's just
Yeah.
nonsense. And
Yeah, it's
at
weird
the
now.
time, at the time it was funny and, high five,
oh,
just
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, but you're a kid and you
Part of it's being a kid, and part of it
you
is
also thought you were invincible at that point in your life.
well,
too.
and right, it's like that's what you
that's
get
also
out.
you want
That's
to
what
test
you get
your
out
invincibility.
of nitrous.
Yeah, for
that's
sure.
what you get out of nitrous is I don't care about nothing. You know?
Right.
So.
That cortisol reduction, and I think that if they look at the hormonal and the brain response, they'll start figuring out. That's why with this story, I was like, why do people abuse nitrous? I believe in the self-medication. Because it takes out the personality and the spiritual stuff, the stuff we don't even know exists.
Yeah.
And it just goes straight into why. Well, it reduces cortisol and it increases dopamine. So it's just, from that perspective, it's understandable, like why opiates are on the rise and nitrous specifically, because we are under stress. And when I'm doing these practices like acupressure, yoga, dieting, supplements like ashwagandha, it feels like a nice opiate. What I'm trying to get out of opiates.
Can I come over?
I could show you this stuff. I swear, if you go in hard on it, it's different.
Okay, well,
I had to do all the things.
Him and I honestly live like 10 minutes, 5 minutes from each other. So
I have heard of people even like freezing their vocal cords and like the alveoli in their lungs and stuff, going too hard with nitrous. Like, I've heard of that.
Can happen.
Yeah, like you will freeze the air sacs in your lungs, and all of a sudden you're like,
yeah. Oh, I can't breathe.
Yeah. Well, seriously.
Sorry about that.
Just being an idiot about it, and then all of a sudden, you're done breathing.
Our lack of information, education, the harm reduction, and the harm reduction. It's I don't really touch it, but it's a thing,
Yeah,
doing that how to do it safely.
Doing that with any inhalant too. This is a big thing. Dude, don't do that stuff alone. Don't do that stuff alone. Yeah. Doing that stuff alone, you lose consciousness, bang your head on a table.
Right.
You might be there for 6 hours bleeding out. Don't do that stuff alone.
Right. Well, other than that, like I'm over here getting ready to video you guys live here. But and there's people from ABC here, by the way.
What's going on, ABC?
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
But Philip, thank you for coming out. I do appreciate it. Nolan, as always. And then, thanks to Venture X Studios in Frisco.
Yeah.
Thanks to JPK Network.
JPK Network.
Yeah, JP, Kathy, and the crew. Let me make that sure
Don't forget
got that correct. Yes. But follow us on Facebook, all the formats.
Yep.
We're out there, and we'll have more with CG Kid
somewhere down the road
for sure. But thanks for tuning in, and remember, go ahead. Do you want to do it?
Sure, why not? There's no magic pill for sobriety, because if there was, we'd probably take too many.
Nee.
There we go.
I overdose on those.